It's strange, the way certain faces never really leave you. Even after years have passed, even after justice has been served, you can still picture them. The way their lips curl into that smug little smirk, the way their eyes dart when they know they've been caught. For me, that face belongs to Chris. And I'll never forget the day I watched him being shoved into the back of a police car, drunk, furious, and humiliated, knowing he had no idea just how much worse his life was about to get. But that's not where this story begins. No, this story started in my mother's kitchen on a gray Thursday afternoon when I realized the man she loved was not just unworthy of her, he was about to become the architect of his own downfall. Mom has always been the backbone of our family. She's one of those people who will give you her last dollar, her last ounce of energy, her last bit of hope, even if you've done nothing to deserve it. She's been through heartbreak before, but she always finds a way to forgive, to rebuild. Chris came into her life like a polished salesman, charming, friendly, with a laugh that made you feel like you were in on a secret. For a while, I thought maybe he was good for her. He made her smile. He'd bring her coffee in the mornings. He'd talk about building a future. But cracks started to show. He was lazy when no one was watching, always avoiding chores around the house. He'd disappear for hours without explanation, and he had this way of making himself the victim in every story he told, like life had been so unfair to him, and everyone else just didn't understand. Then came Darla. At first, her name was just a casual mention. Chris would say, "Oh, Darla's just a friend from the old neighborhood." But there was a certain way his tone changed when he said her name. Light, almost playful. It was my sister who first noticed the late-night texting. Then my brother saw him sitting in his car, parked down the street, grinning at his phone like a teenager. And one night, it all came crashing down. Mom was in the living room, folding laundry, when the call came in. I picked up the house phone. Yeah, we still had one of those back then. And a woman's voice said, "Is Chris home?" It was Darla. And she wasn't shy. Within minutes, the truth spilled out. They weren't just talking. They were meeting. And not in some discreet, out-of-the-way place, but right under the noses of people who knew him. When Mom confronted Chris, his reaction wasn't guilt. It wasn't even shame. It was anger. At her. He started shouting about how she didn't appreciate him, how things had been bad for a while anyway. The words felt like knives. And Mom? She just stood there, holding a half-folded towel, staring at the man she thought she knew. By the end of that night, the fight was over. Chris packed a bag. Mom sat at the kitchen table, her head in her hands, whispering, "I just want to move on." But here's the thing, we weren't ready to move on. My sister, my brother, and I looked at each other across that table and didn't need to say much. The message was clear. Chris wasn't going to walk away from this untouched. Mom wanted to wash her hands of him. We wanted to bury him. We didn't have a plan yet, but we had motive. And sometimes, that's all you need. Chris worked at a Dairy Queen, one of those small-town franchises where everyone knows everyone else's business. The thing about small towns? Secrets don't last long. And Chris had never been discreet. That was our opening. Chris had always been smug about his job. Not because he worked hard, he didn't, but because it gave him this illusion of stability. Something he could throw in people's faces. "See, I'm doing fine," he'd say, flipping his Dairy Queen hat onto the counter like he'd just closed $1 million deal. But there's one thing about small-town jobs. They're only as secure as your reputation. And Chris's was about to evaporate. I picked up the phone one Tuesday morning. The number I dialed wasn't just any number. It was the personal line of the man who owned not just Chris's Dairy Queen branch, but several others in the area. We'd known him for years. He'd been to our barbecues. He'd given us advice when we were looking for summer jobs. And most importantly, he was a man who cared about his business's reputation more than anything. "Hey," I said after he answered, my tone calm but loaded with intent. "There's something you need to know about one of your employees." I laid it all out, the inappropriate behavior, the fact that Chris had been using the workplace as his own personal playground for extracurricular activities. I didn't sugarcoat it. I painted the picture so vividly that I could almost hear the owner's jaw tightening on the other end of the line. There was a pause, then a low, controlled voice. "I'll take care of it." A week later, Chris came home. No hat, no uniform, no paycheck. Fired. The ban wasn't just from that store. The owner made sure Chris was barred from every branch he owned in the county. He didn't just lose his job, he lost his network. And here's the poetic part. The position didn't stay vacant for long. Betty, one of the most hard-working employees there, stepped into his role. And from day one, she ran that place like a warship. Spotless counters, no nonsense, no rumors. Chris? He sulked. He ranted to Darla. And within days, he was gone, moving in with her an hour away. We let him go. For now. Chris thought distance would protect him. Different town, different job, same old behavior. He landed another Dairy Queen gig, because apparently, mediocrity loves company. This time, we didn't pounce right away. We watched. We waited. And the waiting made the next move even sweeter. We reached out to the new owner. He didn't know us personally, so it took a little more persuasion and a careful explanation of why Chris was bad for business. It took months, but slowly the cracks formed. And one day, the inevitable happened. Chris was out again, but the job losses? That was just foreplay. The real revenge was about to start. It started small, a glimpse of Darla's car parked on the corner, then the slow cruise of a vehicle past our house. At first, I thought maybe it was coincidence, but then it happened again. And again. Chris was circling our neighborhood like a shark that had lost its ocean. And here's the thing, thanks to his DUI back in Texas, his probation had never been lifted, which meant one very important detail: no driver's license. That was our golden ticket. We called the police, gave them Darla's plate number, and told them exactly what to look for. Next time you see that car here, we said, you're going to find Chris behind the wheel. It took weeks, but one Friday night the phone rang. They'd caught him. Pulled over, drunk, no license. He was hauled off to jail on the spot, but fate, or karma, wasn't done yet. The police searched the house where he was staying. Inside, several firearms. And since Chris was a felon, that meant more charges, more jail time, and a deeper hole than he could ever climb out of. By the time he finished that sentence, Texas was ready for him. Straight back for his original trial. Chris wasn't just losing jobs now, he was losing his grip on reality. I could see it in the way he moved through town. Shoulders hunched, eyes darting left and right, like a predator who suddenly realizes he's become the prey. He stopped showing up at local bars. He avoided the grocery store during busy hours. Even his once spotless truck started collecting dust, parked crooked in his driveway. But fear alone wasn't enough for me. Not yet. I wanted him to feel the same suffocating paranoia he had inflicted on my family, that sick, stomach-churning dread of being watched, of knowing you can't escape what's coming. So I took it up a notch. A prepaid phone, blocked numbers, short cryptic texts. We remember. You can't hide. It's coming. Nothing threatening enough for the police to trace back to me, just enough to keep him awake at night. Then I started leaving things. A folded newspaper article about his old stalking case, tucked under his windshield wiper. A single Polaroid of his truck, taken from across the street, slipped into his mailbox. An envelope with no return address, containing nothing but a piece of rope, the same length he once used to tie a noose around my sense of safety. The man was unraveling. It happened on a rainy Thursday night. Chris had been drinking. I could tell from the way his truck swerved slightly as he pulled up outside my street. I watched from my living room window as he staggered toward my house, fists clenched, muttering to himself. The thing about Chris? He always underestimated people. He thought I was still the same scared, quiet person he once stalked. He didn't know I'd been waiting for this. Before he could even set foot on my porch, a pair of squad car headlights cut through the rain. Officers stepped out, hands already on their belts. Turns out, Chris had violated the restraining order I'd quietly refiled just weeks earlier. And thanks to the little security camera I'd installed above my door, I had crystal clear footage of him approaching my house with what looked like a weapon in his pocket. They cuffed him on the spot. No shouting, no bargaining, just the cold click of metal and the slow, shameful walk to the back of the cruiser. Through the rain, our eyes met for one brief moment. He knew. He knew I had orchestrated every step that led him here, and I smiled. Chris didn't just spend the night in jail. He spent the next 6 months there, waiting for trial. And during that time, I made sure his world outside the prison walls crumbled piece by piece. His boss got an anonymous envelope containing court documents from his first stalking charge, The one he thought had been buried years ago. He was fired within a week. His landlord received photos of him prowling around my house in the rain, violating the terms of his lease that required no criminal activity on premises. Eviction notice followed. Even his friends, the few that remained, started distancing themselves when screenshots of his arrest record began quietly circulating on local Facebook groups. I didn't even have to post them publicly. People just talked. Word spreads fast in small towns. By the time his trial came around, Chris looked nothing like the smug, untouchable man who once tormented my family. His hair was thinner, his cheeks hollow. He wouldn't meet my eyes. When the judge read the sentence, 18 months behind bars, plus mandatory psychiatric evaluation, I felt a weight lift off my chest that I didn't even realize I'd been carrying. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about closure. As they led him out of the courtroom in shackles, I remembered every night I'd slept with one eye open, every time I'd jumped at the sound of a car pulling up outside. And I knew he'd never have that power over me again. Sometimes justice doesn't come gift-wrapped from the system. Sometimes you have to build it yourself, piece by piece, until the person who broke you is standing exactly where they belong, at rock bottom, with no way back up.